Hello and welcome to the Downtown Midland Podcast, a monthly piece of content to know all things about Downtown Midland. This podcast is presented by the MCTV Network, a service of the City of Midland. To learn more about Downtown Midland, be sure to follow and like Downtown Midland social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to this podcast on your preferred platform, and to get more details, go to downtownmidland.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Downtown Midland Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Ferguson, and I'm with my co-host today, Melissa Farley. How you doing, Melissa?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing great. We're in downtown Midland at the Northwood University Idea Center. So in this month's episode, we'll be talking about summer happenings in downtown Midland. But before we get to that, we need to talk a little bit about this podcast because this is the first episode. It's the first podcast of its own. So let's get to it. There's a lot to go on in this podcast. We're going to drop it every month to our community, and we'll be talking about what's happening in downtown Midland and much more.
Yes, and before we continue on, let's talk about what that much more means.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about the history of downtown Midland. We'll be talking to business owners and their experiences here in downtown. We'll be engaging with the community for feedback and live call-ins. I'm really excited about that part.
Yep.
And then, of course, we'll also be talking about our upcoming events, and we'll spotlight one every month.
Great, let's get to it. And quick reminder, you can subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast platform. So let's get to our business spotlight.
All right. Thank you for joining us today. I want to introduce our first ever guest to our first ever podcast, John Gostendrick from Northwood University Idea Center. Welcome, John.
Good morning, and thank you for having me as a guest.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, John, give us your quick 30-second elevator pitch on the Northwood University Idea Center.
The Idea Center represents the intersection of creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. What we're doing here is having a student-led center that will bring in people from the community, from local schools, and provide resources for creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. An example would be this weekend we're actually hosting the volunteers for the Downtown Midland Art Fair, and we're also hosting an oral history event inside the podcast studio where the Midland County Humane or Historical Society will be interviewing people from the community.
That's really cool. I like that.
It is. And John, so for our podcast listeners, give us the visual setting of where we're actually at in downtown Midland.
So I think we have the best corner in Midland. We are on the corner of Main Street and Ashman, and we're right next to the H Hotel, next to Grazie, the restaurant, and across the street from Diamond Gyms.
Nice. And you said that the art gallery was here in this corner. Where did all that art go?
So the art was actually being sold on consignment by the individual artist, so we return the art to the actual artist.
That's awesome.
But we do intend to continue to partner with entities like Creative 360 to still have that art engagement and the Midland Center for the Arts.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So I know people who are listening can't see this, but this is a huge, big building. So what all do you have here? I know we're in the podcast studio here, but it goes way far back.
So surprisingly, we're 4,000 square feet. We are in the Timberwolf studio. When you move from here further back, you enter a gather space, which is a community gather space. Anyone's free to walk in off the street and use it for a day. And then when we move from the gather space, we move into what will be a hospitality location where you can sit and talk about creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship. And then we're excited this summer we'll be doing some construction on a community makerspace where if you have an idea for an invention, you can use some materials, 3D printers, to actually do a prototype of your invention.
That's so cool.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
And it looks like you can have meetings here too, a really nice meeting space.
Yes, so the gather space is an excellent meeting space because all the furniture is movable. So if you wanted to have a meeting here, you can actually design the setup that fits your particular need at any given time.
That's so cool.
Seeing that it's a unique space, how could the community get in contact with you or the Northwood University Idea Center if they would like to use it?
So you can find us on Instagram, NU Idea Center, on Facebook, NU Idea Center, and also ideacenter@northwood.edu. And those are 3 convenient ways to reach out to us and reserve the space or inquire about events.
Awesome. So before we let you go, John, is there anything else you'd like to say in regards to Northwood University, Idea Center, or even Midland in general? And just the floor is yours.
We're really excited about having this space and having it be student-led because it connects Northwood. Even though we're 2 miles down the road, it seems like we're distant. And so this is our opportunity to really engage the community more intimately. So we're very excited to have this downtown space.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, John, for being our first ever guest of our first podcast. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to doing these podcasts in this podcast studio all summer. So thanks again.
Thank you very much. Honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll talk about the things that are happening in downtown Midland. So be sure to follow us on social media to get the latest up-to-date information. Well, welcome back. We are going to get to the events spotlight, so let's get to it, Melissa. And I'm going to start off with talking about Tunes by the Tridge, which happens on June 10th all the way through August 17th. So it's every Thursday in downtown Midland, and it happens at 7 p.m. So I'm looking forward to the live music in downtown Midland.
Me too. I'm so excited about that. The second event that we want to highlight is Mini Golf on Main. That'll be July 7th through the 17th, except for that Sunday. We will not be doing it that Sunday. But it's an opportunity to putt for free downtown. We'll have greens downtown on the street, and you and your friends and family can come down, play putt-putt, win some prizes. We've got 12 holes, so it'll be a really good time.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'm a golfer myself. I'm also looking forward to seeing if any of the LPGA golfers come down to putt-putt on Mini Golf on Main. So
that'd be so cool.
If they're listening, come on down. We want to see you in the community.
Absolutely.
If you can. So, hey, and the last event that we want to quickly spotlight is just the sidewalk sales that are happening in downtown Midland. They happen on July 29th through July 31st. So it's a good way to come out and support your community and your local community. So
absolutely. Now for the spotlight. For this month, we want to spotlight our pedestrian plazas.
Yes, the pedestrian plazas. They're backed by, popular demand. So, this past year and a half, we've learned a different way to approach some community events and community happenings and gatherings just based off of the pandemic. But one of those ways, and a good way, from my opinion, is to do this pedestrian plaza and kind of close down, the Main Street area. So it was approved by City Council back in April of this year to do that. So let's let our audience know about the pedestrian plazas in downtown Midland and the Commons and kind of like what to expect for those two things.
Sure, absolutely. Well, before we start, let's talk about the difference between the Commons and the pedestrian plaza. So the Commons started at the end of May, and that is just an area of downtown where you can buy alcohol from different approved locations and take them anywhere in that specific area downtown.
Yep.
So you can grab a drink from the H Hotel and walk over to Proper Taco, grab some tacos, and then walk on down Main Street, and that's perfectly fine. So that's the Commons.
Yep.
The pedestrian plaza is the area on Main Street that we're closing down the road. And that is between Ashman and Rod. And that's going to be like the hub of the summer. That's where we're going to have a bunch of tables for people to sit at and enjoy eating outside. We're going to have live music every Friday and Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. There's going to be games. We've got cornhole. We've got really cool lights that we're going to put downtown. So it's going to be a really cool area.
Yeah, and if you're listening, we have a city website, downtownmidland.com, that you can go to and actually see the maps for the Commons areas and the pedestrian plazas. But, the pedestrian plazas from Ashman to Rod.
Yep.
And on Main Street, and then the Commons area is kind of in between there. So, so head to our city website on downtownmidland.com or the social media, Downtown Midland, to, get that visual if you need it. There'll also be clear markings on the sidewalks too as well. So, hey, I'm looking forward to hanging in downtown Midland this summer. I know that one of the other things that we didn't say that we're going to have like sod coming in, I guess.
Yes.
So there'll be some grass on the sidewalks, which is awesome to, sit down on the sidewalk and get some shade too.
Yeah, we're also going to have big trees and pots on Main Street. So it's going to be really cool. It's going
to change the look of Main Street, which is going to be awesome. And I look forward to that.
I am too. I'm so excited. And before we get to our most interesting and our absolute favorite segment of the podcast, I want to remind everyone to make sure they check out downtownmidland.com for more details on all of the events, including the pedestrian plazas and common areas that we just talked about. And it includes maps of both too. So make sure you check those out.
Yeah. And stick with us and we'll be right back.
So you heard us refer to this podcast as the Downtown Midland Podcast, but in our first ever community engagement section, we're looking to you. We need your help naming this podcast. And Chris, I've heard you have some ideas.
I do have some ideas.
Okay, let's hear them.
I ask you not to laugh, those that are listening, and Melissa right here too, because you're sitting right next across from me. But here we go. Here's some ideas: Meet on Main, The Main Way, Downtown to Go, Main Street Musings, the dynamic Downtown Midland Podcast, Midland's Main, and I cannot forget the ode to my favorite social experiment game show, The Tridge Has Spoken. Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks.
Nice. Survivor. Got it.
Yep. Yes, thanks.
Those are good, but I think the community can do better. So we need your help. Like I said, stay tuned to Downtown social media channels, and we'll give you the opportunity to offer us suggestions and then vote on the name of this podcast. So
That's
we
right.
really, really appreciate your support in the community this way.
Yeah, and this is our ongoing community engagement segment to this podcast. So maybe you'll be a guest on the show. Maybe you want to share an idea, give a compliment, or even a suggestion, hopefully a positive one. Be sure to stay connected with us through the website, downtownmidland.com, and our social media for more information. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The Midland community is a great place to live, work, and play, and we really appreciate you all listening to our podcast today, and we look forward to bringing good news to your ears.
Right.
Chris, thank you so much for having me on this month's episode.
Thank you, Melissa, for being with me. This wraps up this month's episode of the Downtown Midland Podcast. Be sure to continue to listen to us. We appreciate that listener support. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this month's podcast about Downtown Midland. This podcast is presented by the MCTV Network, a service of the City of Midland. To learn more details, be sure to follow and like Downtown Midland's social media or visit downtownmidland.com. Subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Also, you can watch us on MCTV Network on the Midland Government Affairs channel and the City of Midland's YouTube channel.